Okay, so welcome to Hannah. So Hannah has got an amazing story and I'm really excited. She's also a friend of mine, so I am so excited to be talking to you today. So we'll jump right in because we've had a bit of delay. So if you could start, I love the story you told me when you were 4 and you were driving past the cemetery, so maybe we could lead on from there. So just to recap, these series is around talking to people who awoke or were really aware of their gifts and their connection to spirit really early on, and also the flip side with parents, and at the end or as we go through, if you have any advice or tips for parents of what they may be able to bring on board in their toolkit to work with their children who may be going through similar experiences. I know myself, I wasn't aware until the last couple of years, like where I really came into working with spirit and being awake as such for a term. So I don't feel like I can necessarily have that insight when I'm with my daughter. I'm obviously acutely aware, and I nourish and grow her experiences from what I can experience from me. But having had that experience as a young child, I think you bring a lot to that. So be great to hear your story. So yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's really exciting to be here. So just kind of starting from like when I first started having these spiritual experiences as a child. Is that like...
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
So I kind of, when we had our little pre-chat the other day, I spoke about my experience when I was about 4 years old, and Mum and I drove past the cemetery, and of course there's like no people there kind of thing, and as we're driving past I was just like, mummy, like look at all the people.
I love that story.
She was kind of like, what? And I think that's when she first kind of like started to figure out that there was something going on, or something a little bit special kind of happening with me.
And how did that feel for you? Like, you know, it was obviously your normal, so to speak. So is that kind of your first remembrance of what you were seeing, and you just thought everyone could see what you were seeing? And
yeah, I remember as a child we had this Wendy house, and it had like an upstairs floor as well. I was very lucky as a little kid, and I have this memory, and I must have only been about 2, and I was always dressing up as an angel with like fairy wings, that or a bride. But I have this really like strong vision of feeling really strongly like I was an angel, and like I could soar, like I could like visualize like a field and just like soar along this field. And I remember like having this, it was almost like I feel like my inner child was remembering who I was when I was connected to source kind of thing. And then if we kind of like kind of fast forward like 12 years later, no, not 12 years, it was much longer than that, when I had my second like big awakening as an early adult, when I was 17 and I moved down to Christchurch, and I started like feeling like angel wings again and feeling really connected to like that particular like sphere.
Yeah, awesome.
So that was probably like my earliest memory.
Wow, that's cool. And you were mentioning to me your mum was really supportive around that, and she took you to meditation at a really early age.
Yeah, so there was a Buddhist like meditation center in Brooklyn and Wellington where I grew up, and she took me there when I was 7, and we did like an offering of fruits to the gods, and I got taught transcendental meditation. And then from a really young age, like she had like tarot cards in the house, or like angel cards. We had like the first deck of like Doreen Virtue cards, and we used to do them like every night before bed. And
awesome.
She was really like, she taught me how to read and write when I was 4, and I would do like journaling every night with her like before bed. So she was really incredibly supportive of that.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. And you obviously felt really in tune with those activities.
Yeah, I did.
It really helped.
Yeah, really helped. Yeah,
that's cool. And then we were talking as well about your experience as you're a bit older with the storm. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So had this really this is kind of when I first started to push away spirit, because there were sides to it that were really awesome, and there were sides to it that were quite frightening. And hadn't really had like a religious upbringing, like didn't go to church as a family, didn't read the Bible, like nothing like that. And we were living in a 3-story house at the time, and I was on the bottom floor and Mum was on the top, and it was a really, really stormy night, and like the typical like trees banging against the side of the house kind of thing, like scary movie type situation. And I remember hearing, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, and had like no idea where it was coming from. Like it was almost like I was channeling these words. And then I walked into like the hallway to go up to the next level of the house, and then further up to Mum. And I saw like Jesus's reflection in the mirror with like a crown of thorns, and just absolutely like freaked out. Ran upstairs, as you would, as like an 11, I think I was about 11, 12. Ran upstairs, told Mum. Mum was just like, did not know how to deal with it, and was just like, go back to bed, like just go. Don't know what to do, don't know how to handle it. You've woken me up. It's like 3 a.m. or whatever it was. And so after that, I do remember having a conversation. I don't know if it was that night or like the next day, but just being like, look, guys, clearly something's opening up here, but I would really appreciate it if we could kind of just level it down. And so I kind of suppressed my gifts from about that age until I was about 17. There were a few things that happened in between those years. But overall, it was kind of just to like shut it down, try and cope through high school sort of thing.
Yeah, and so leading up to that time, did you find that your gifts and your connection with spirit or source was getting stronger and stronger? So when you talked about the experience of the cemetery when you were 4, was it just getting like more intense for you as the years went on? Because you were, as a child, obviously so open. And how did you manage, or was it just again intuition with you to kind of know to speak with them and to them? And did you ask for guidance, or was it just there was a lot of information coming through to you, or however you experienced it, and you kind of just navigating what that meant, as well as kind of being in, I guess, lack of a better word, like a 3D earth where people were kind of going about their business in a material sense? How did you kind of navigate that as a younger child, or was there not a distinction between the two?
I guess as I'm listening to your question, I'm kind of thinking like, it's like when I was younger, it was a remembrance of who I was before I was incarnated on this planet kind of thing. And I was just me. Like I was a very like joyful child, very connected, always talking to spirit. I've got an auntie who said I was always in the back of the car just jabbering away to someone, like it was totally normal, just having conversations with all these people. And then at about 10, it's like I got disconnected from it, and something started to change, and it came in the form of anxiety and like huge like panic attacks. And mum actually ended up like banning the news in the household and things like that, because I would just get too like poorly affected by the realities of the planet. And I think my sensitivity, like my empathic sensitivity, started to kick in, where I started to disassociate and realize that actually I wasn't living connected to source and spirit entirely. I was actually living in a really dense planet, and it's almost like your bubble of protection as a child starts to wean off and off and off and off, and then you come into like early adulthood or adolescence, and it all suddenly like sinks in. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it really does answer my question. Yeah, it's more like I'm trying to really get inside your head of what it was like, because it's, I think for someone like me being a mum, it's really, I just find it so fascinating or intriguing and just, I know, insightful around what the experience is when you're a child, because it wasn't my experience that I remember, or, you know, I had a few, you know, little situations where I could probably link it to being connected or remembering, you know, where I was from, etc., but nothing like what you're explaining. So I just think it's just great to try and understand how you were feeling and some of the things that you might have been going through. And we spoke a little bit about this, but I think it's probably a really good topic to maybe touch on, is around when you were at school and high school, and the acceptance. You're saying your peers were always really accepting of when you were talking about it and really open-minded with it, and you didn't feel like you were isolated in any way or anything like that?
Yeah, my peers thought it was pretty cool. I remember, I think I told you this story. I remember a classmate of mine who was dating a guy and was really excited about dating this guy. And I remember saying to her, oh, you're going to walk down Linden Quay today and you're going to see him. And I just knew, like 100% just knew. And she was just like, what? And then the next day she comes up to me, I bumped into him and we ended up having like an impromptu date. Like, how did you know? And I remember when I first, like, I think I told you mum bought all the Tony Robbins tapes, and then we watched The Secret together. And I remember like sitting in class and just feeling like I'd nailed the law of attraction at age 15, and just sitting in class in science and being like, guys, like it really works, like get in the vortex. Like
I love that. Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. And then tell me how things progressed with, you had some challenges with mental health as well through this, and whether you noticed it as, did you think it was maybe part of what you were going through with your spirit connection initially, or could you see that it was a difference? I think it's probably a really important topic as well around,
awakenings and mental health, kind of in the link between the two.
And you're really passionate about that now as well.
Very, very passionate about it. It's my purpose. So like I say, like it started with anxiety at like age 10. And then I had my first bout of what the teacher at school called like a murky brain when I was about 12. And it was like a younger version of depression, where I just became just completely like insular and very, very disconnected. And I remember losing a lot of weight and I couldn't eat and all of this kind of stuff. And it ended up being very cyclical. So every year around like winter time, I would go into this dark bubble and things would be really like difficult and dense. And I remember another experience. I'd connected with a girl. My father lived out in Parapara, and I'd connected with a girl there. And she, like, the thing that always supported me through these mental health things was my connection to like Jesus and Christed energy. Like it wasn't necessarily in a religious sense, but that God presence and like worship and that kind of thing really, really supported me. Like I've always really connected with like the archangels and all of that kind of stuff. So anyway, I'd connected with this girl, and I remember being in the bout of this like really, really deep depression and calling out to Jesus in my room, and like still feeling like that immense love coming through. And then having this really scary experience where I'd kind of like had a conversation with the other part of it and been like, it must be like the devil or something demonic or something like dark that's causing this thing to happen to me. And literally hearing this like bang, 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 bang on the door, like wow. There was no one in the garage. I was in this little sleep out and just being like, oh my gosh, this is too scary. I need to shut this stuff down. And then, I left school and left school early because I had a bout of depression in my final year, and it had just got into me, like really, really affected me. And I couldn't even like sit in my classes without crying, and just like when you lose all of your connection to your joy. And I was usually quite an intelligent girl at school, and just not being able to concentrate in any of my classes, it just wasn't working for me. So ended up spending 3 months with my mother at our family farm, just healing and meditating and journaling and doing walks on the beach and trying to reconnect to myself. And I woke up one day and I was like, I want to go to Christchurch and I want to study psychology. And this is like my mum being like, you've just been like a vegetable for the last like 2 months and now you want to go and live in a different city by yourself. And I got down there, and this is part of the mental health journey because it relates to the spiritual awakening thing. And I met these 5 Saudi Arabian guys and I got introduced to the magic of like Moroccans, like kind of more like Moroccan spirituality and that kind of thing. And I feel like it's really weird, but I'm going to say it, and it's very woo-woo. But I feel like it was a past life connection that activated me in my gifts and kind of it was almost like my Kundalini awakening.
Yeah, awesome. Wow.
And I ended up like once again having these experiences of feeling like the angel wings and feeling really connected to God consciousness and overlapping timelines. And it's a really hard thing to describe without going on a completely different subject. But my boyfriend at the time, who was Saudi Arabian, was really concerned about me, was just like, this is not normal. Like, what is she on about? What's she talking about? Like when you're having a spiritual awakening and someone else isn't, it's really hard for them to kind of see your reality.
Yeah.
So he took me to the doctor and I got rushed to an emergency psychiatric appointment.
And what were you thinking through all of this? Like,
well, I was just in my element. Like I was just
sure.
Like this is cool, you know, like, it's all fine. And I got taken to Princess Margaret Hospital in Christchurch. And to be honest, like this particular hospitalization experience was totally different to the one that I had last year. A very different environment, a lot more like kind of more woke, more like modernized, more accepting kind of thing. Like they didn't even medicate me.
Right. Yeah.
They diagnosed me, and I was diagnosed with bipolar type 2 at that particular space and time. But I was only in there for 5 days, and it was weird. It was kind of like this experience of the overlapping timelines again. Like I remember having a conversation with one of the psychiatrists, and he was just like, yes, like you are gifted, but it's about you learning how to talk about your gifts in the right context, in the right environment. Like,
isn't it great that he had that conversation like that with you from a medical industry?
Yeah. So he was quite a spiritual man himself. And so I remember, it's just a little side story, but all the nurses like being like, because all 5 of the Saudi guys came in with like a big bunch of flowers each. And one of them was like, I can't even get one man to bring me flowers.
Oh, that's lovely.
But yeah, so that was my first kind of experience of, I was actually relieved, to be honest. Like I was relieved to have a diagnosis and be like, oh my gosh, this explains the cyclical like ebbs and flows and the like just the discrepancies or the variations between my mood and all of that kind of stuff.
So there's no link between your awakening, you know, I know there's synchronicities, I don't know if that's the right word I'm looking for, but the bipolar that you were diagnosed with from a human perspective, you know, like as a person is quite different from your spiritual, or did one trigger the other or kind of intertwine so that it was pushing you down your life purpose? Because if you hadn't had that experience, then you probably wouldn't have gone to where you're going now, where you've got such a passion for helping people with similar experiences. So, you know, I guess I'm just trying to distinguish with people listening. Do we need to clarify that your awakening or as your spiritual experience as a child didn't cause the bipolar, but it was something that was part of your past journey to experience with your awakening?
They definitely intertwine. Like they definitely intertwine. And I think I spoke to you last week about this documentary that I was watching on Gaia called Crazy Lives. And all these people that I've seen, there was also a great video that I watched the other day about the lead singer of Creed, and he had a psychotic break in an episode. And it seems like there's this link between people who have these experiences that if they were in an Eastern culture would be raised as shamans and be like the seers or the oracles or the...
I understand. Okay, now I understand.
Yeah,
great.
People of like the village. So I think that there's a definite link. Like, I remember a friend of mine, well, she became a friend of mine after this, but she was launching a online magazine called the Spirit World Times. And they were kind of having a dinner with me to welcome me in as someone who might write for this online magazine. And there was about 5 of us at the table, and all of us were very like spiritual people, had these experiences, these visitations, whatever you want to call it. And every single person at the table had been admitted into a psychiatric ward.
Wow.
And
big clarification for me there.
Yeah, and I've spoken to a couple of other friends who like are either mediums, or they work with spirit, or they do oracle-based work or light work, and they feel like if in the wrong context, they would have ended up in the same position as well.
So do you think it's a medical misdiagnosis with not understanding how people connect to source and spirit?
I wouldn't call it a misdiagnosis. I would say, because bipolar means I can experience the two extremities. I can experience the light and I can experience the dark. And that's essentially what, I wouldn't even call it like light work for me. It's more like, I call it like walking between the worlds and being able to access different realms or different experiences for people and connect to them and see, like, especially when it comes to trauma, to be able to dive into someone's experience and see it from that light. And not everyone has that ability to access those realms, because they might be more in the middle, where they're just kind of in the median range. So like a bipolar diagnosis resonates for me. And after the second hospitalization last year, previous to that, I was like, right, I'm a shaman. I don't need my medication. I was really anti-medication and very much like, oh, it's just a suppressant and it and all this kind of stuff. And there's 2 different rounds of thought that I'm kind of at with that particular topic. But now I call them my grounding pills. Because they keep me on planet Earth, and I value it so much, like after my experience last year.
Yeah, wow, yeah, that's why I wanted to have this conversation, because it's just given me such a different understanding with that as well, which is awesome. And so you mentioned a little bit when we spoke last week, I think it was, also around how your experience last year and the why you think you had that experience. Do you want to speak about that a little bit?
Yeah. So there's a couple of different like reasons why I feel like what happened. But about maybe like the end of 2018 kind of thing, I had decided that I wanted to call myself a spirit, like a mental health clairvoyant or a mental health light worker, or just like to be going into that realm. And I knew that I wanted to support people in their spiritual awakenings and people who had been diagnosed to be able to navigate it in a more empowered way. And I thought the route at the time was to go and study counselling and trauma, and go and like get like another certification and a degree and work in that way. And it was almost like, in a humorous sort of way, Spirit was like, no, we've got another idea for you. We're going to send you straight into the belly of the dragon and show you exactly what it's like from the inside again. But I think as well, there's a lot of people, I don't want to say a lot, but there are, so I'm going to say a lot. There's people in the spiritual community who say that it's like, it's old paradigm to have like any fear base, or to not protect yourself, and you don't need to be grounding yourself all the time, and you don't need to be like anchoring yourself, and it's all love and light and all of this kind of stuff. And if I learned anything last year from that whole process of having like a really, really scary, ungrounded, to be honest, like demonic experience, it is like you do need protection. Like you do need to be really cautious of what like realms of spirit you enter into, and how you ground yourself, and what you surround yourself with. And I might get some like kind of feedback from that, but I think it's really, really important to share the experience that I had. Um,
And I love how you said how you just got thrown into, rather than doing it from an academic point of view, where you might have gone, back to study, went back to study for a while. Instead, you had that experience full on. And I love that expression when you said you went right into the belly of it. So then you could truly understand what people would be going through in that type of experience as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we spoke too, as that we never get what we can't handle. I'm sure at the time, I'm not sure if that saying would have held much grace for you with what you were going through, but but yeah, I just so admire your journey. I think it's amazing. And where to next, Hannah?
So at the moment I'm writing a book that is all about my experiences growing up spiritual as a kid, and some of my other like woo-woo experiences that I've had throughout my time. And it's really like there's this beautiful quote that I came across and put on my vision board the other day that's by Brene Brown, and it goes something like, one day you're going to tell your story and it will become the survival guide for someone else. Like,
I love that.
And
yeah, great quote.
That's what I'm working on at the moment. I had a really beautiful realization last night. I'm part of a group coaching program at the moment, and one of the things that it's really supported me with is I almost, after the experience last year, I almost completely like voted myself off the spiritual island and was like, right, I'm not doing spirituality anymore. I'm not being woo-woo. I'm just going to be completely grounded and only do mindset work and all this kind of stuff. But I know that in my essence with the work that I do, that I am a healer and I am like a shaman in that sense. And so it's really like building up my business again. And I don't even really like calling it a business because it sounds so like, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Building up my clientele again and working with like really healing trauma and healing in past lives and Akashic records and that kind of stuff. And I want to go and live in Bali for a couple of months next year, so on my vision board. But also balancing like going back to normal work as well is fine too, and being able to kind of walk between those two worlds to have a bit of grounding.
Yeah, I like that as well. And I also, it's a little bit like that cave mentality. If we're locked away in caves, like we can't help people, or it's about that experience on earth and being with people. And I think part of that going back to work and the routine as well can be really helpful sometimes.
Yeah.
And just the interaction with people, that's how we grow. And often more, the pushing buttons, the, people that you interact with and you can rub up against. And it's really, that's how you grow, right? To have those experiences as well. Yeah, that's awesome. So any advice or tips or anything you can think of that might come to mind for any parents that may have children, younger children or teenagers that might be experiencing a really strong connection with Source, and maybe the best thing they could do for them? Like you said, your mum took you to meditation classes and helped you journal, which I imagine would be amazing to help kind of just focus and work through some of the experiences. But anything else that you wanted to add?
Trying to think what's really like supported me the most. Definitely like teaching them not to fear it, giving them like an empowered presence with it. Like I once worked with a mother who had a child who was like vomiting every night and seeing like spirit in his room and really like having a terrible experience with it. And I created like a guided children's meditation to like support him to like take his like dragon with him into bed and kind of like really build with the child's imagination. So like supporting like imaginative thinking and how to like, oh, I've got my like my special like sword of power and all this kind of stuff, because they're at the right age to really like work with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that.
So yeah, really building with their imagination, but also like not doing it alone, like contacting people who do work with spirit and saying, hey, like, can you support me with my child? Like, what could we do to really, I was quite honored when this mother reached out to me and I was able to provide a solution, because sometimes if you're a parent who hasn't necessarily had spiritual experiences of your own, it's really difficult to be able to understand what's going on. And I think there's some really great, none of them come to mind at the moment, and I feel like you're going to write some of them yourself, but the children's books that that navigate through those topics and being
there's some great books. I've got a couple here, just ones around mindfulness and things as well. But yeah, there's definitely some really lovely books out there. I can't think of any off the top of my head or even the authors now either. But yeah, I'd love to write a book for children around some.
I just like that was a little message for you as we were going. You're gonna write
Thanks, Hannah. You're gonna hold me accountable.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So yeah, is there anything else you want to talk about? You can talk. Do you have a course, an offering that you've got in the pipeline that you wanted to talk about at all?
Oh yeah, I'm just doing a special offer until the end of May, and that is my subconscious package where I do like dream interpretation for people.
Oh yeah.
So how it's working at the moment, there's an option where I can just interpret a dream and do a dream alchemy session overnight where I tune into your energy and get messages for you in my sleep, and then write you a little email and send you a meditation that I create personally for you. Or there's the VIP option where you have 3 days to go through 3 nights of dreaming and subconscious work, and I voice memo coach you over those 3 days, and then we have a session at the end of it with a hypnotherapy journey to support you with healing what's going on. So yeah, and it's either $999 or $166 New Zealand dollars.
Yeah, such a great offering. Yeah, that's awesome. And just quickly, what's your favorite grounding technique?
Ooh, favorite grounding technique.
Or your go-to, maybe, if there is one.
Definitely getting out and like doing some earthing, like putting my feet and my toes in the sand, or getting up in the bush. I live like close to, and if people are familiar with Wellington, the Greenbelt in Mount Victoria. So I love getting up there and being amongst
That's lovely. There's some awesome birds through there now too, eh?
There's what?
Those parakeets, those colourful parrots, coming back up there. Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off. What you were going to say?
Oh, just that usual one of like feeling like the roots going down through your feet into the center of the earth is always my favorite. But I love shamanic drumming as well.
Oh yeah, awesome. That's great. Okay, we'll probably wrap up. Thank you so much. It's been such a great discussion. I love hearing your story, and I can't wait for your book to come out. That'll be awesome. So is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, just thank you so much for having me. It's been really
thank you. Oh, it's been lovely. It's been lovely to talk to you. All right. Thanks, Hannah.
Awesome.
All right, bye.
Bye.